President Trump declared on Twitter today that the impeachment inquiry was unfair to him, like a lynching. What was your response when you saw that word?
I was irate and disgusted and frankly dumbfounded because the president hasn't been castrated. He hasn't been dragged into a square, hung by a chain, like a noose around his neck, possibly tortured, having somebody put oil all over his body and light him a flame and reduce him to as if he was swine over a roast, because that's what happened at lynchings in America, over 4,000 of them, and not just African Americans, but 3/4 of them all happened to African Americans. And it was for things like unpopularity, let alone unfounded crimes and allegations. The president has over 1 million words at his disposal that could be more apropos to talk about what he perceives to be a baseless allegation against himself. But to reduce lynching to somehow thinking that it's, if I am inconvenienced by a charge against myself, then I'm involved in a lynching. I don't like it when now Justice Clarence Thomas used it, talking about the Anita Hill hearings as a high-tech lynching. I didn't care for it when Bill Cosby spoke about it because it was inconvenience to him of allegations. It cannot be reduced in this way. And here we are a few weeks from Halloween when the president's favorite term has been a witch hunt. That might have worked better in this instance. It may have been a more parallel charge. But to have the president of the United States, given all the things he said about race in this country up to this moment in time, still be completely inept at understanding the racial dynamic in this country, we don't reduce things in that way. And lynching is certainly not one of those categories to reduce and use as a colloquial punchline.
After months of wrangling, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson managed to renegotiate a new Brexit deal with the European Union. But getting it through the UK Parliament may be even harder. For the first time this century, MPs sat in the House of Commons on a Saturday to debate the plan in a historic emergency session. But lawmakers eventually voted to delay a decision on Johnson's deal.
Eyes to the right, 322.
The Prime Minister was then forced by law to request an extension to the Brexit process, although he simultaneously told the EU why they shouldn't grant it.
Further delay would be bad for this country, bad for our European Union, and bad for democracy.
What happens now is anybody's guess. But the EU doesn't need to make a decision on the extension immediately, which means the Prime Minister can still plough on trying to get his deal through Parliament. So, what's in Boris Johnson's deal? Well, in many ways, the fundamentals are much the same as those in the one negotiated by Theresa May. The UK will still pay a divorce bill to the EU, £33 billion if it leaves on October 31st. It will still guarantee the rights of EU citizens living in the UK, and there will be a transition period lasting until the end of 2020. But there are some changes, most significantly a replacement to the so-called backstop. In short, the new deal will give Northern Ireland special status, recognising the unique history of the island of Ireland. Northern Ireland will remain in the UK's customs territory, but will be considered part of the EU when dealing with the import and export of goods. As a result, there will be no tariff checks on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is a member of the EU. Instead, there will be a virtual border in the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. That means goods that come from England, Wales or Scotland will be subject to tariffs when they come into Northern Ireland. These same goods will not be taxed again if they then go onto the Republic of Ireland. If the goods stay within Northern Ireland, the business using them will be able to apply for a refund on the tariffs from the UK. Goods from Northern Ireland will also follow EU VAT rules to avoid a hard border.
I think this is a good deal, one that is good for the United Kingdom and Ireland and Europe.
The Prime Minister needs a majority vote in the House of Commons to pass his deal, and that's going to be tough without the support of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, which has come out against it.
But it must be Brexit for the whole of the United Kingdom, leaving the single market and the customs union.
The DUP's biggest fear is that Johnson's deal, like May's, could open up an opportunity for the establishment of a united Ireland. Johnson has staked his political reputation on delivering Brexit by October 31st, and that now hangs in the balance.
Sources are telling me that the anonymous senior Trump administration official who penned that 2018 New York Times op-ed warning about President Trump from the inside of his administration, well, that anonymous author has now written a new book about President Trump, one that will be released next month. It is distinctively an attempt to convince the nation to not re-elect President Trump in 2020. CNN has exclusively obtained the cover of the book. It's titled, quote, "A Warning." The book has been a closely guarded secret until this moment and will be released officially November 19th. The anonymous senior administration official, you will recall, had warned last year in that New York Times op-ed of an amoral, erratic, petty, and ineffective President Trump. The author said that officials inside the administration occasionally worked to thwart the president's worst inclinations. The president at the time called the New York Times op-ed treason and suggested that then Attorney General Jeff Sessions investigate and find out who wrote it. A draft press release that I've obtained describes the book, A Warning, as, quote, explosive, with a, quote, shocking firsthand account of President Trump. The author will remain anonymous. Sources tell me that elaborate precautions have been taken to protect the author's identity and that the publisher and the literary agents have verified that the author is the same person who wrote the New York Times piece. Matt Latimer, the co-founder of the literary agency representing the author, Javelin, also told me, quote, the author of A Warning refused the chance at a 7-figure advance and intends to donate a substantial amount of any royalties to the White House Correspondents Association and other organizations that fight for a free press that seeks the truth. The book was not written by the author lightly or for the purpose of financial enrichment. It has been written as an act of conscience and of duty, unquote. Latimer refused to say whether or not the author remains part of the Trump administration. We have just reached out to the White House for comment. We will bring you their reaction when and if they respond.
We have royal news. In a new televised interview, Britain's Prince Harry acknowledges what the press has been speculating for months, that there is a rift between him and his brother, Prince William. But he says that will not break their bond.
There's been a lot of talk in the press about rifts with your brother. How much of that is true?
Part of this role and part of this job and this family being under the pressure that it's under, inevitably, stuff happens. But look, we're brothers. We'll always be brothers. We're certainly on different paths at the moment, but I will always be there for him, and as I know, he'll always be there for me. We don't see each other as much as we used to because we're so busy. But I love him dearly, and the majority of the stuff is the majority of stuff is created out of nothing. But it's just, as I said, as brothers, you have good days, you have bad days.
It only weighs 3 pounds, has a texture like firm jelly, and tons of wrinkles. Yet that pint-sized prune of a brain is the most amazing and powerful organ in your entire body when it's working right. But when it's not, as in Alzheimer's disease, the results can be devastating. Take a look here. The brain on the left, that's normal. The one on the right has advanced Alzheimer's. Here's another view. See how the brain shrinks and fluid-filled spaces expand. That's Alzheimer's, crippling the ability to think and to plan. And also look here at the hippocampus. It shrivels. This small seahorse-shaped structure allows us to form new memories, but is also the first to disintegrate. So how does this all happen? Well, it starts inside the wrinkled part of the brain here called the cortex, where billions of brain cells interconnect in trillions of ways to create these neuron forests. Tiny electric charges move signals like a baby's cry through each neuron to a junction called the synapse, where chemicals called neurotransmitters leap across the gap, carrying the cry to more and more neurons. And a memory is born. But in Alzheimer's, protein pieces called beta amyloid begin to clump together, while another protein called tau starts to fall apart, creating plaques and tangles that block signals and nutrients from getting through. Cells begin to die. New memories cannot take hold. The ability to think and plan deteriorates. Personality and behavior is affected, and ultimately the once mighty brain is no more.